The night before the wedding, my fiancée wanted to postpone the ceremony and go out to relax. I agreed to her unreasonable request because I loved her. The next day, I received a call from the hospital saying her certain area was torn, advising us youngsters to exercise restraint. I was furious and threw the medical report in my fiancée's face. Before I could confront her, she preemptively accused me. I'm your fiancé. Won't I have to sleep with you after marriage? Shouldn't I practice with someone else first? I'm training for our happy married life. Shouldn't you praise me for being considerate and thoughtful? The day before the wedding, my fiancée suddenly called to postpone the ceremony by a week. I immediately worried if something happened to her family, but Su Yingying casually said, I want to go out and relax. Faced with Su Yingying's unreasonable demand, my relatives naturally objected. We specially invited a master to choose this auspicious date. How can she change it on a whim? Yes, Yuan, your future daughter-in-law is being utterly unreasonable. You mustn't agree to such an outrageous request. Mom also expressed concern. Yuan, we've already increased their betrothal gifts 3 times, totaling 880,000 yuan. Do you think she might be having second thoughts? I gently patted Mom's hand. Mom, what kind of person do you take Yingying to be? Don't worry, she wouldn't do that. Because I loved Su Yingying, I ultimately defied our relatives' objections and agreed to postpone the wedding by a week. Before I could even ask about her travel plans, she became unreachable that same night. I called non-stop until midnight, but her phone remained unanswered. Just as I was about to give up and contact the police, the call finally went through. Su Yingying's accusatory voice came through the line. Lin Yuan, what's your problem? I told you I needed space to clear my head. Can't you let me have some peace and quiet? Her voice sounded utterly exhausted. I quickly apologized to her. I'm sorry, I was just too worried about you. If anything happens, you must tell me immediately. Just as I was about to hang up, a male voice suddenly came through. Baby, we agreed on 300 rounds. We've still got 199 to go. We need to step up our game. Su Yingying. I completely lost it, roaring into the phone, but Su Yingying had already hung up. When I called back, no one answered. Frantic, I contacted everyone trying to find Su Yingying's whereabouts. Eventually, I could only reach Su Yingying's best friend Luo Shuang. Su Yingying is missing. She tried to lie to me, but I immediately detected something wrong from her tone. I threatened, if anything happens to her, I'll make sure you regret it. Under my threat, Luo Shuang finally relented and agreed to take me to find Su Yingying. But when we arrived at the destination, I was stunned. Didn't she say she was going to relax? Since when do people relax at hotels? Recalling the man's voice from earlier, a sense of foreboding washed over me. I grabbed Luo Shuang and hurried upstairs. Wait, I need to grab something. Luo Shuang turned to retrieve a bulging black plastic bag from the car. What's this? After her evasive mumbling, I lunged to snatch it. The bag tore instantly, spilling its contents across the ground. The entire bag was filled to the brim with condoms. Did Su Yingying make you buy all these? My rationality shattered. Ignoring Luo Shuang's protests, I dragged her into the hotel. But when we reached the specified room number, the door stood wide open. Peering inside, the scene nearly made me vomit. At the threshold, a pungent scent of hormones assaulted my senses. The view revealed a disheveled bed, scattered clothing, and used condoms, each detail mercilessly assaulting my composure. When I saw the white wedding dress torn to shreds, I could no longer control myself and vomited while leaning against the wall. This was the custom-made dress I had accompanied Su Yingying to order. Never did I imagine that this garment symbolizing pure love would become some sort of costume between her and another man. After emptying my stomach contents, the nausea didn't subside at all. I could only retch bile over and over. Luo Shuang was terrified by my state. Lin Yuan, are you okay? I thought she'd told you. Tears blurred my eyes, the bitterness in my throat rendering me speechless. I still wanted to delude myself into thinking this was all a hallucination when the hospital called. Is this Mr. Lin Yuan? Your fiancée, Ms. Su Yingying, has been hospitalized unconscious. At that moment, I felt like killing Su Yingying myself. Clutching the phone, I rushed to the hospital. Upon reaching Su Yingying's hospital room, I immediately heard her carefree laughter drifting from inside. I never expected how to be so amazing now, but we agreed to do it 300 times tonight. He ended up taking several boxes of medication, but couldn't handle past 110 times. Then came another female voice, presumably Su Yingying's friend. You got your fun, but you scared us half to death. What if Lin Yuan finds out about this? How will you face him? To my surprise, Su Yingying just giggled at this. Anyway, we'll be doing this after marriage too. Consider this intensive training for his future happiness. He should be thanking me instead. Then you must admit this time you went so wild. Your head was completely filled with thoughts of your how. Already furious, I never imagined Su Yingying could be this shameless. I directly kicked the hospital room door open. The two in the room jumped in shock, springing to their feet instantly. Lin Yuan. Seeing me, Su Yingying froze momentarily before bursting into tears and throwing herself into my arms. Lin Yuan, let me explain. The moment Su Yingying opened her mouth, I caught a whiff of that distinctively male stench. Looking closer, I even spotted a curled pubic hair clinging to her. My scalp crawled, and I shoved Su Yingying away violently. Su Yingying, you're utterly disgusting. Is this how you cheat behind my back? Seeing that I'd uncovered her dirty secrets, she dropped all pretense. Lin Yuan, must your control issues be this suffocating? Haven't we postponed the wedding? I'm still just your fiancé. What right do you have to dictate my life? Those words made me slap her across the face in rage. You damn well know about the wedding. After all these years together, I never dared harm a single hair on your head. Yet you shamelessly spent 7 days and nights with that man. Su Yingying clutched her cheek, tears glistening. We were just savoring our last moments of freedom. What's wrong with that? Do you think everyone is as stubborn and unyielding as you, like an old rotten log? Honestly, Lin Yuan, I never imagined you could be so petty and boring. Besides, I only bid farewell to that unforgettable relationship because I feared cheating after marriage. Do you actually want me to have an affair? I did this for your own good, yet you're blaming the victim instead. The Hao Su Yingying mentioned was Ran Hao, her college Shulan boyfriend from university. All these years, I thought she'd long forgotten him. Never did I expect she'd concealed it so thoroughly. Recalling how I'd lived in lies all this time, our entire relationship now feels like one colossal joke. I raised my hand again, ready to strike, when my arriving mother-in-law barged in and shoved me away. Lin Yuan, have you lost your mind? Yingying is your fiancée? You're laying hands on her before the wedding. What's next? Daily beatings after marriage. Sure enough, birds of a feather flock together. Not only does she not blame her own daughter, she even accuses me instead. After speaking, my mother-in-law turned and hugged Su Yingying tenderly. My dear daughter, what happened to you? Lin Yuan, for that slap you just gave my daughter, you must compensate her medical expenses. I sneered and threw the medical report in front of her. See why your precious daughter was hospitalized. She tore her genitals after battling it out 300 rounds with another man. Instead of demanding compensation from that scoundrel, you come to me and take a whiff of your dear daughter's breath. We're all adults here, no need to spell it out. My mother-in-law instinctively stepped back, staring at me in disbelief before shifting her gaze to Su Yingying. I expected Su Yingying to show remorse, but all I saw on her face was lingering satisfaction. Lin Yuan, you're a grown man acting so timid and fussy. It's just sleeping together. What's the big deal? If Hao can play with me however he wants now, you can do the same to me later, can't you? Faced with such explosive remarks, my mother-in-law actually supported her. Exactly. Aren't you young people supposed to be open-minded? No need to nitpick over such trivial matters. She then sneered coldly. Lin Yuan, when all's said and done, aren't you just trying to pay less bride price? I'll reduce it by 60,000. Now you should be satisfied, right? After speaking, the mother-in-law even considerately turned and whispered, Did you use protection? Su Yingying stood with arms akimbo, declaring righteously, Of course, we used protection the entire time. Hearing this, the mother-in-law seemed greatly relieved as she turned to look at me. Lin Yuan, you heard it yourself. My daughter used protection throughout. The child will definitely still be yours in the future, so stop being so petty. Through Su Yingying's collar, I could see countless hickeys on her chest. I'm being petty? I couldn't help but sneer coldly. This kind of shameless slut, I wouldn't take her even if you paid me. Su Yingying looked aggrieved. I took all the precautions. What more do you want from me? Can't you be more open-minded? We're in the age of feminism now. Every woman is master of her own body. We have the right to use our bodies as we please. All this talk about propriety is just feudal foot-binding cloth. Can't you learn from my mom? Though she's older, her thinking has always been at the forefront of the times. The mother-in-law supported Su Yingying. Lin Yuan, you hit someone before my daughters even married into your family. Clearly you have domestic violence tendencies. I could never trust Yingying to you. All right, you'll need to give me another $1 million as a security deposit. You must guarantee Yingying won't suffer the slightest grievance in your family. Otherwise, this $1 million will count as compensation for her emotional distress. Hearing this, my jaw dropped in astonishment. Is this still considered marriage? This is clearly buying ourselves an ancestor to enshrine at home. My humble home can't accommodate your family's exalted Buddha. We're better off not marrying such a woman. Hearing this, the mother-in-law panicked. She grabbed us, demanding, What do you mean such a woman? My daughter is sweet, sensible, obedient, and capable. How dare you call her such a woman? Marrying my daughter is a blessing your ancestors accumulated over 8 lifetimes. Utterly shameless. I was so furious I could barely speak. Su Yingying took offense at these words. Embarrassing? Who knelt outside my dormitory building all afternoon to pursue me? Weren't you afraid of embarrassment then? You didn't actually think that after marrying you, I'd revolve around you all the time and obey your every word, did you? I never imagined that after liking someone for so many years, I'd end up liking such a piece of trash. Heartbroken, I turned to leave. Su Yingying grabbed my arm. For a split second, I thought she'd finally realized her mistake, but her next sentence plunged me straight into hell. Ahao was hospitalized after battling 300 rounds with me. Since he can't get out of bed now, you'll care for him in the hospital until he's discharged. Then we'll get married. You'll handle all his eating, drinking, and bathroom needs. Oh, and reimburse his medical bills while you're at it. He must have exhausted himself trying to satisfy me. After paying his bills, get him some tonics, and order a few decent nutritional meals. With that, Su Yingying shoved a medical bill for Ran Hao into my hand, the amount glaring at me, 100,000 renminbi. I've seen shameless people, but never someone this brazen. Isn't this blatantly trying to scam me out of my money? Su Yingying smiled sweetly. Lin Yuan, you've pursued me for so long. Shouldn't you show your manly resolve at a time like this? Let's just forget about those trivial matters earlier. After you reimburse the medical fees, I promise I'll cut all ties with him and devote myself fully to being a good wife. When I remained silent, she pouted coquettishly. Or I could write you a pledge if you prefer. I slapped her across the face without hesitation. Go make your pledges to that dog of a man. Lin Yuan, are you insane? I am insane. Only a madman would ever consider marrying you. Su Yingying's face darkened. What do you mean by that? I took a deep breath, finalizing my decision. This wedding's off. With those words, I turned and walked away. Su Yingying sneered, with a shameless expression. Lin Yuan, even if we don't marry, don't think you'll get a single cent of the betrothal gifts back. I paused slightly, turning back to say coldly, if you want to eat prison food, just try it. As I passed by the adjacent hospital room, a whistle sounded from inside. Looking in, I saw Ran Hao lying leisurely on the hospital bed. Hey Lin, I need to piss. Bring me the portable toilet. Ran Hao adopted the manner of a young master ordering servants. Seeing my unmoved expression, Ran Hao frowned. Yingying said you're more obedient than a dog in front of her. Can't even handle such a simple task. I turned and entered the room, walking toward the portable toilet in the corner. Ran Hao revealed a satisfied smile. Yingying said you're the most generous. You wouldn't get angry over such trivial matters. And rest assured, we used protection the entire time. Even if Yingying gets pregnant later, it definitely won't be my child. Look, being able to marry someone like Yingying is nothing short of 8 lifetimes worth of blessings for you. If you don't mind, after marriage we could even share. Before Ran Hao could finish, I lifted the filthy toilet bucket and hurled it at him. Ran Hao instinctively tried to dodge, but his legs suddenly gave way, leaving him writhing in pain on the floor as foul liquid drenched his body. Lin Yuan, I'll kill you. As Ran Hao tried to struggle up, I kicked him squarely in the crotch, the pain nearly rendering him unconscious. Su Yingying rushed out from the room at the commotion. Lin Yuan, have you lost your mind? Su Yingying charged forward and shoved me away. Lin Yuan, even if you're jealous, you can't resort to violence. As a lawyer, have you forgotten even the most basic principles? Her face filled with concern as she looked at Ran Hao. Are you all right, Hao? Yet she hesitated to approach him, repelled by the stench permeating his body. Ran Hao's face was now devoid of color. I just told him to come to me if you ever need help, and then he attacked me. Su Yingying limped forward and grabbed my collar. Lin Yuan, kneel and apologize to Ahao now, and I might still forgive you. If you don't apologize, don't even think about marrying me. Looking at Su Yingying's twisted expression, I calmly said, fine. Lin Yuan, even my mother-in-law couldn't stay silent. As a grown man, how can you be so petty? As I turned to leave, my mother-in-law rushed to block me, but Su Yingying pulled her back. Mom, you don't actually think Lin Yuan has the guts to call off our wedding, do you? Don't worry. Within 2 days, this worthless Lin Yuan will be kneeling before me begging for forgiveness. When that happens, I'll make him apologize properly to you and Ahao. My mother-in-law chuckled in agreement. True, Lin Yuan's always been like this over the years. It seems my daughter's ability to tame men rivals your mother's in her prime. You mustn't go easy on Lin Yuan when the time comes, or he'll never learn his place. These words sent a chill through my heart. All these years of tolerance had ultimately yielded only this outcome. Perhaps Su Yingying never loved me at all. In her eyes, I was just an obedient dog unwilling to leave her side. Senior brother. I just stepped out of the hospital entrance when a familiar voice stopped me. Looking up, I saw Wen Kaching, my junior from law school days. We used to be close, but I deliberately distanced myself from female acquaintances to avoid making Yingying jealous, and gradually grew apart from her. Never expected to meet her at the hospital. What brings you here? I asked in surprise. A blush crept across Kaching's cheeks as she saw me. Senior brother, have you been well lately? Before I could respond, she mysteriously handed me a document folder. I've prepared everything for you. I was puzzled. When I opened the folder, I found a stack of documents and legal complaints inside. Flipping through the materials, I discovered they were all omising photos of Su Yingying and Ran Hao, that despicable couple. I instinctively asked awkwardly, "Where did you get these?" While feeling embarrassed, I was also deeply grateful to her. "Thank you, Kaching. Don't mention it. A friend sent these to me too. I never imagined things would turn out like this. If you really want to thank me, I haven't tasted Auntie's cooking in ages. Could I come to your house for a meal?" At that moment, my mother, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, happened to witness this scene. She clearly already knew about Su Yingying's misdeeds. If only Kaching could become our daughter-in-law. In my mother's eyes, she had always treated Kaching like a daughter. With Kaching's appearance, my mother's worries visibly melted away. At once, I didn't know how to repay this debt of gratitude. I clutched the photo tightly in my hand, feeling a flicker of warmth in my heart. My mother brought Kaching home and cooked many of her favorite dishes. Watching Kaching's figure bustling in the kitchen helping my mom, it felt like we'd returned to those carefree days of the past, leaving me overwhelmed with emotions. At the dinner table, Kaching ate with unusual relish. "Auntie's cooking is always so delicious," she said, placing a lion's head meatball in my bowl. After all these years, I never imagined she still remembered my favorite dishes. Compared to Kaching's thoughtful care, when I reconsidered Su Yingying, I increasingly felt I'd been blind back then. Looking at Kaching's gentle and steadfast demeanor, I unconsciously sighed. Kaching paused slightly. "Senior brother, you can tell me if anything troubles you." I shook my head repeatedly. "Nothing troubles me. It's just, after years of sparse contact, I don't know how you've been. Are you still alone?" Kaching opened her mouth to answer when suddenly my phone rang. "Hello." Su Yingying's cold laugh came through the receiver. "Lin Yuan, you're really being patient, huh? If you made me angry before, you'd come running to me begging forgiveness within an hour. Now half a day has passed. When are you planning to come apologize? Remember to bring a nutritional meal when you come." I laughed angrily at Su Yingying's words, bursting out with a snort. "Su Yingying, how can there be such a shameless woman like you in this world?" "Lin Yuan, what do you mean by that? Do you know how badly you beat a Hao? If I hadn't begged him desperately not to report you to the police, you'd already be arrested. You should be thanking me instead of insulting me. Can't you learn from a Hao? Look how magnanimous he is. Then look at how petty and narrow-minded you are." Suddenly, Kaching stood up and snatched my phone away. She yelled into the phone, "Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you scold my senior brother? If you love playing around so much, should I find you some black men? Or maybe arrange some stallions for you? A bride-to-be still sleeping around, yet calling it being open-minded? Normal people aren't open like you. I suggest you go register at a psychiatric hospital immediately." The former debate champion's reputation was well-deserved. Su Yingying was directly reduced to a trembling mess. Su Yingying's voice shook violently. "Lin Yuan, so you didn't apologize because you found yourself a mistress outside. Just wait. See how I'll deal with you." After dinner, Kaching helped my mother clean up. When everything was tidied, she stood up to leave. My mother quickly grabbed her arm. "Kaching, you rarely visit. I've already cleaned up the room for you. Stay with us for a few days." Hearing this, Kaching blushed again quietly. She glanced at me, as if seeking my approval. I quickly followed my mom's lead and said, "Stay here for a few days." Hearing this, Kaching smiled faintly, adorable yet captivating. "Then I'll graciously accept your kindness." Only then did I realize, this former junior who once followed me around had fully blossomed into a remarkably charming woman, capable of handling things on her own. No doubt she had countless suitors. At this thought, an inexplicable pang of loneliness washed over me. "Xiao Yuan, we're out of toiletries at home. Go buy some downstairs." Snapped back to reality by my mom's instruction, Kaching offered to accompany me, but I hastily declined and went downstairs alone. I discovered that merely being near her now made my heart race uncontrollably. After purchasing the toiletries, I just stepped out of the store when 3 familiar figures walked past me. Lin Yuan used to crawl like a dog to apologize at my feet before. I wondered why he suddenly stopped obeying me. Turns out he found some vixen outside. "Mom, if he doesn't want to marry, fine. Let's see how he explains this to his relatives. Today we're going to tie up that home-wrecking slut." I immediately threw what I was holding at them. "Let's see who dares touch my junior sister." Hit by my projectile, Su Yingying turned around furiously. "Who the hell dares mess with me?" When she saw it was me, Su Yingying stormed forward. "Lin Yuan, how dare you cheat on me, you spineless coward? Do you believe I'll—" Before she could finish, I slapped her across the face. "Who are you calling a homewrecker? You think everyone's as shameless as you?" Su Yingying instantly burst into tears. "You defend her like this and still claim she's not your mistress, when I was still planning to forgive you and enter the palace of marriage with you. Lin Yuan, is this how you treat me?" I immediately spat. "Marry you? You make me sick." Su Yingying's father grabbed my collar. "Lin Yuan, Don't think I won't hit you just because Ying likes you. How could you do such despicable things? Despicable. Hearing these words from her father, I found it utterly ridiculous. Could I ever be more despicable than your daughter? You probably don't know yet that your precious daughter was outside fighting with another man for 7 days and 7 nights? Hearing this, my father-in-law looked shocked. But who could have predicted he'd instead blame me the next second? Lin Yuan, as a man, shouldn't you reflect on what you didn't do right that drove my daughter to such behavior? Since you've now also found a mistress, hand her over and this matter will be considered settled. Otherwise, you won't get back a single cent of the 880,000 betrothal gift, and you'll have to compensate another $1 million for my daughter's reputation damages. I chuckled helplessly. Trying to cheat me out of my money? Did you forget I'm a lawyer myself? Su Ying laughed even louder. Lin Yuan, we've hired Attorney One, the most famous lawyer in the capital city. Do you really think we'll lose this case? Hearing this name, I frowned. I'd heard of Attorney One in Beijing who never lost a case, but never imagined she'd take Su Ying's case. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded behind me. Apologies, but I'm withdrawing from your case. Attorney One, why are you here? Su Ying immediately approached with a smile. When I turned around, I realized, isn't this Keqing? So the Attorney One they mentioned was actually her. Attorney One, you must be joking. We can pay whatever legal fees you require, 80,000 or 100,000. Just name your price to win this case for us. Keqing didn't bother to conceal the disgust in her eyes. Su Ying, I just berated you moments ago. Can't you even recognize my voice now? Su Ying frowned, pondering for a moment. You're that homewrecker? While shocked, Su Ying felt even more overwhelming fury. You dare mock me. Su Ying raised her palm to slap toward Keqing. Instinctively, I rushed forward and shielded Keqing in my embrace. Lin Yuan, you dare protect this homewrecker. Hand her over to me today, and I'll forgive you. This trash, daring to insult Keqing? I unhesitatingly slapped her. Keqing is 100 times more noble than you. You're not even fit to compare to her fingernail. How dare you curse her? Su Ying looked utterly stunned. Lin Yuan, you struck me for this vixen? Have you forgotten your past promises? You vowed never to let me suffer the slightest grievance. You've changed. I scratched my head. Did I ever say that? Su Ying fumed. Lin Yuan, let's wait and see. At tomorrow's wedding, I'll expose you as a hypocrite in front of all our relatives. With that, Su Ying left with her parents. Watching Su Ying's retreating figure, I suddenly realized I was still holding Keqing. I quickly let go of her. Sorry, I acted impulsively without thinking. I hope your boyfriend won't mind. But Keqing kept her head lowered. I couldn't see her expression, only that her ears had turned crimson. I don't have a boyfriend, always been single. Keqing's voice was soft, yet every word struck my heart. Keqing, how could someone as amazing as you? Keqing finally looked up, as if she had resolved herself, her gaze unwavering. Senior, truth is, you've been the only one in my heart all these years. I've always hoped that one day I could stand side by side with you and become your solid support. Though not a single word of love appeared in Keqing's speech, every syllable between those lines overflowed with affection. What man wouldn't be moved by this? I stared into Keqing's eyes for a long time. The entire world fell silent in that moment. In my eyes and heart, there existed only Keqing. Bits and pieces of the past played before my eyes like a slideshow. We participated in debates together, supported each other, and went camping together. I remember under the starry sky during our camping trip that year, I asked her about her dreams. At that time, Keqing looked at me, her eyes filled with starlight. Shige, I have 2 wishes. One is to become a great lawyer, and the other one. I'll tell you the other one in the future. As my thoughts returned to the present, Keqing stepped forward and gently took my hand. Shige, do you remember when I said I had 2 wishes all those years ago? I nodded softly. I do. The other wish is to become your wife and accompany you to see all the splendors of this world. After saying this, Keqing smiled, brighter than the starry sky in my memories. Time skipped to the wedding day. A relative called to inform me that Su Ying was making a scene at the hotel. When I arrived there, she immediately rushed forward and sneered. Lin Yuan, you actually dared to come? Don't tell me you really thought I'd marry you. As nearby relatives noticed us, Su Ying blocked my path and suddenly burst into tears. Uncles and aunts, you don't know. Yesterday Lin Yuan secretly met a homewrecker behind my back. If I hadn't discovered it in time, I'd still be kept in the dark. Watching Su Ying's preemptive accusation, I remained unfazed, calmly observing her performance. How could I entrust my future to such an irresponsible man? At these words, all the aunts and elder relatives swarmed around us. How could you do such a beastly thing, Lin Yuan? Lin Yuan, do you know how much Ying loves you? How could you bear to ruin this wedding? Are you even human? Seeing that everyone was speaking up for her, Su Ying wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Lin Yuan says that since my family accepted his family's betrothal gifts, I must marry him. Otherwise, he wants me to return the gifts. Hearing this, the enraged relatives all declared, "Return my ass." It was Lin Yuan who ruined this wedding and your reputation. Not a single cent of the betrothal money will be returned. With a satisfied smile at the response, Su Yingying said, "Did you hear that, Lin Yuan? Even your own relatives know who's in the wrong. Don't even think about getting the betrothal gifts back. Cancel the wedding. I'll never marry you." At this moment, the wedding host had already taken the stage. Su Yingying rushed forward alone. "This wedding is cancelled." The host looked bewildered. "And you are?" Su Yingying was infuriated by the host's question. "I'm the mistress of this wedding, Su Yingying. Don't I have the right to cancel it?" The host scratched his head awkwardly. "But the bride's name is Wen Kuqing." "What did you say?" Su Yingying staggered backward, nearly falling off the stage. "Lin Yuan, what's going on here?" The relatives were equally bewildered. "Lin Yuan, weren't you marrying Yingying? Who's Wen Kuqing?" Su Yingying rushed forward angrily. "Wen Kuqing is that homewrecker." She grabbed my tie violently. "Lin Yuan, you spineless coward. You actually used our wedding to marry a homewrecker. Had Kuqing not repeatedly forbade me from laying a hand on anyone, I would have slapped her already." The relatives chimed in support. "Lin Yuan, regardless of what you and your family think, we as your relatives will never allow you to marry a mistress." Hearing this, Su Yingying assumed a victorious demeanor. "Lin Yuan, did you hear that?" I smiled faintly. "If I don't marry Kuqing, should I marry this slut instead?" Su Yingying turned bright red on the spot. "Who are you calling a slut?" The relative actually lunged at me. "Lin Yuan, it seems we need to teach you a proper lesson on behalf of your parents." As the relative's fist was about to connect, I calmly pulled out the explosive photos of Su Yingying and ran out from my pocket. "Dear relatives, do you really want me to marry such a woman?" Seeing these shocking photos, the relative's fist froze midair. "This is really Yingying?" The relatives snatched the photos and passed them around urgently. Seeing the situation turning against her, Su Yingying threatened viciously. "Lin Yuan, where did you get these photos? You're violating my privacy." Looking at Su Yingying's indignant expression, I felt nauseated. "Aren't you ashamed of hooking up with some random guy outdoors for 7 days and 7 nights? Yet you're afraid of people seeing these ugly photos? Can't you be more open-minded?" After confirming the person in the photos was indeed Su Yingying, the relatives trembled with anger. "Su Yingying, how do you explain this?" Unexpectedly, Su Yingying looked casually dismissive. "This is how young people interact nowadays. You wouldn't understand." Before she could finish, the relative's slap had already landed. Slap, slap, slap. A dozen more slaps followed, turning Su Yingying's face into a swollen mess. Get out, get out. A disgusting woman like you doesn't deserve to step into our Lin family's door. Security, hurry up and drag this cursed thing out of here." Su Yingying called for her own relatives to come to her aid. The Su family relatives swarmed forward menacingly. "You can't bully someone from the Su family like this." But when the photos were slapped onto their faces, their expressions instantly changed. "Su Yingying, you've utterly humiliated us. We have no such person in our Su family." Immediately afterward, Su Yingying was dragged out of the hall by security. As the farce concluded, the MC's voice rang out. "Please welcome our bride." Kuqing appeared before me in a magnificent wedding gown, like an angel from a fairy tale. I stepped forward and took her hand from her father. "Uncle, though this seems sudden, rest assured I'll cherish Kuqing alone for life." Father-in-law wiped his tears and solemnly entrusted Kuqing to me. "This child always dreamed of marrying you." "Dad." Kuqing's face flushed crimson, but tears soon followed. "Xixiang, I'm just so happy." I gently wiped her tears away. "I'll ensure your happiness never wavers. Please welcome our newlyweds to exchange rings and make their lifelong vows." "Wait." A sudden, jarring voice disrupted the ceremony. When I looked closer, it was Su Yingying. Staring at her panicked face, she clearly already knew that Ran Hao had been arrested for telecom fraud. "Lin Yuan, you promised to marry me. How could you marry her?" Su Yingying helplessly knelt on the ground, weeping bitterly. Yet I merely cast her a glance of disgust, watching as security escorted her away again. I was foolish before, wasting my time on someone unworthy.